A Siphonophore is basically a free-swimming/floating colony of marine hydrozoans that are mostly delicate, transparent, and slightly colored. And they have zooids possessing specialized functions that are classified as phylum Cnidaria. And phylum Cnidaria is a phylum underkingdom containing over 11,000 species of aquatic invertebrates, found both in freshwater and marine environments, including jellyfish, hydriids, sea anemones, corals, and some of the smallest marine parasites, and obviously siphonophores. Anywho, you guys have been seeing pictures of a siphonophore, but you must be wondering, what is going on? Why do they look like a long noodle? Well, I'm going to answer that question for you right now. So, siphonophores look like pool noodles, very long pool noodles at that, because they are made up of more than one organism. And I don't mean multiple organisms as in many cells, I mean multiple organisms as multiple living beings. You may be very confused what I mean by many, organisms. And what I mean by that is that, obviously multiple organisms. But how is that possible? Why is that possible? Well, a siphonophore is actually like a colony, like I stated before. Each organism is called a zooid, which I already mentioned before, but each zooid is its own organism, which makes a siphonophore a colony. And every single zooid is grown off of the siphonophore in a reproduction called asexual reproduction. The only weird part about the asexual reproduction that happens with a siphonophore is that the organisms stay connected and don't split off. And since the zooids don't split off from the main colony of the siphonophore, siphonophores do commonly grow to lengths of 130 feet or 40 meters, which for reference is longer than a blue whale, which is commonly known as the biggest mammal in the ocean. But the funny thing about their growth is that they usually don't grow to be any thicker than a broomstick. But besides their X, Y, and Z ratios being really wonky and really funny, they do have neat features that are shared among all siphonophore species. And I say species as in plural because there are over 175 species of siphonophores, and they can vary a lot from what they look like because some look like pool noodles, like I've been showing, and some of them look like bubbles, like the commonly known Portuguese man-o'-war. And they are still called siphonophores. And the reason why they are still called siphonophores is because they follow the basic anatomy of these traits. And these traits are gas-filled floats that provide buoyancy to the colony, swimming bells which propel the colony, and a central stem that bears specialized parts for feeding, defense, and reproduction. And sorry for jumping around a bit, but back to the zooids that are also on the colony. Some of them do have tentacles, and these tentacles do have muscles. And these tentacles are used to draw prey in and bring them to the gastrozooids of the colony, which contain digestive organisms which inevitably feed the colony. And now we're going to go further in depth with how they reproduce, because I briefly went over them reproducing asexually. But what is asexual reproduction? Asexual reproduction is a, umbrella term, because there are many different types of asexual reproduction. There are a total of 7 types of asexual reproduction, and they are binary fission, budding, which is what siphonophores use, vegetative propagation, spore formation, which is also known as sporogenesis, fragmentation, parthenogenesis, and apoptosis. Since siphonophores use budding asexual reproduction, I'll only talk about that one. So, budding asexual reproduction is when a new organism is developed on a bud on an already existing organism. And like I already stated before, siphonophores go around this part a little weird because usually with budding, the organism that is newly developed detaches from the original organism. But since siphonophore is a colony, they stay together and they stay connected by the central cord. Now changing topics a bit, we're going to talk about how these creatures die. And the funny thing is that siphonophores can actually die pretty easily. Despite their size, they have many predators that do eat them, like many fish, turtles, and seabird species that do consume them. And they also explode. If you're wondering how do these animals explode, well, it's not like a self-destruct thing, but it is kind of a self-destruct thing. Because if they go too high or too low out of the perfect zone of pressure for them in the ocean, they simply just explode. The amount of pressure a siphonophore needs depends on the species, but the most common amount of pressure they need is 46 MPa, which equates to 465 bars. Now, you might be wondering, how were these discovered? If you weren't, well, you weren't. I don't know what to say about that. Anywho, they were discovered by a Swedish biologist and physician named Carl. I cannot pronounce his last name. You can read it. And he discovered the siphonophore called a Portuguese man-o'-war, which is the most commonly known siphonophore. And little fun fact about Portuguese man-o'-wars, they usually inhabit the Atlantic Ocean, the Indian Ocean, and the Pacific Ocean. And that's pretty much all the knowledge we have of siphonophores. So, yeah, you know what a siphonophore is now.